They laughed when she stepped on stage to audition, but when Camila's voice filled the theater, their smug smiles vanished. The woman they once dismissed left them completely speechless. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the high windows of the Morgan Theater, illuminating floating dust particles like tiny stars in a forgotten galaxy. Camila Rodriguez, 36, sat silently in the back row of the empty theater, needle and thread in hand as she meticulously adjusted the hemline of a period costume. Her nimble fingers worked with practiced precision, each stitch placed with care born from 15 years of experience. Ms. Rodriguez. The voice echoed through the cavernous space. "We need the Ophelia costume for tomorrow's rehearsal. Is it ready?" Camila looked up from her work, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Almost done, Mr. Winters. Just finishing the final adjustments." Sebastian Winters, the theater director, nodded curtly before disappearing backstage again, not bothering to wait for further explanation. Camila sighed softly, returning to her work. At the prestigious Hartwick Academy of Performing Arts in New York City, she was virtually invisible, just another staff member whose contributions were essential yet overlooked. Few people at Hartwick knew that Camila had once harbored dreams of standing center stage rather than hiding in the shadows of the costume department. Fewer still knew that she held a bachelor's degree in theater performance from Cal Arts, or that she had once been considered a promising talent by some of the most discerning professors on the West Coast. The framed diploma now gathered dust in her small Brooklyn apartment, a reminder of ambitions gradually suffocated by rejection after rejection, each one citing different reasons, but ultimately conveying the same message: she didn't fit the mold. Too ethnic for classical roles, too mainstream-looking for ethnic roles, too old, too young, too much accent. Not enough accent. The contradictions had piled up until Camila had redirected her creative energy into costume design. Another late-night cam? Camila looked up to see Marcus, the Academy's technical director, leaning against a nearby seat. In his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, Marcus was one of the few people at Hartwick who treated her as more than a service provider. "Just finishing up Ophelia's dress for tomorrow," she replied, holding up the delicate garment. The lace was tearing at the seams again. "Sophia is rough on the costumes," Marcus agreed, referring to the student playing Ophelia in the Academy's production of Hamlet. Apparently, her father donates enough each year to fund the entire spring season. "She's talented," Camila acknowledged with genuine appreciation, despite the young actress's tendency to treat costume fittings as inconveniences, just unpolished. Marcus studied Camila for a moment. "You know, I've worked at 6 different theaters and 3 film sets. I can always tell who actually understands performance from the inside." He tapped his temple meaningfully. "You've got the eye." Camila smiled but said nothing, focusing instead on tying off her final stitch. Marcus was perceptive, too perceptive sometimes. During their 5 years as colleagues, he'd occasionally caught her mouthing lines along with the student actors during rehearsals or subtly adjusting her posture to demonstrate proper stance while fitting costumes. "The showcase auditions are tomorrow," Marcus commented casually. "Rumor has it there will be agents from William Morris and CAA in attendance." The annual showcase was Hartwick's most prestigious event, an opportunity for graduating students to perform before industry professionals. Landing a role in the showcase virtually guaranteed representation and often jump-started careers. "I know," Camila replied, carefully folding the completed costumes. "I've already prepared the wardrobe. Everything is labeled and ready in the green room." "That's not why I mentioned it," Marcus said, his voice lowering slightly. "There's still an open slot for the Tennessee Williams scene. They haven't cast Blanche yet." Camila's hand stilled. "Marcus, I've seen you, you know," he continued undeterred. "When you think no one's watching. Running lines, working through blocking. Last month, when you were alone in the costume shop, you were performing Blanche's monologue from Streetcar. And Cam," he paused, ensuring he had her full attention, "it was better than anything I've seen from any of the students." Heat crept up Camila's neck. "That was private. Why?" The question hung in the air between them, simple yet devastating in its directness. "You know why," she finally answered, resuming her packing with deliberate movements. "I tried that road. For years it led nowhere. That was then," Marcus countered. "This is now. You're more seasoned, more skilled. And still Latina, still not quite right for most roles, still not what they're looking for." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Camila softened her tone. "Look, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I've made peace with being behind the scenes. I'm good at what I do now." "You're excellent at what you do now," Marcus corrected. "But that doesn't mean you couldn't be excellent on stage too." He stood straightening his jacket. "Auditions start at 2:00. Backstage entrance. Just something to think about After he left, Camila remained seated, her hands resting on the neatly folded costume. The familiar ache of abandoned dreams pressed against her chest. She thought she'd buried those ambitions years ago, suffocated them under layers of practicality and acceptance. Yet here they were, stirring again, awakened by Marcus's well-meaning but ultimately painful recognition. That night in her apartment, Camila found herself standing before her bedroom mirror, the worn copy of A Streetcar Named Desire open in her hands. The pages were dog-eared, certain passages underlined in pencil, notes scribbled in margins, evidence of countless hours spent inhabiting Blanche DuBois's fragile, complex psyche. "I don't want realism. I want magic," she whispered, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Yes, yes, magic! I try to give that to people. I misrepresent things to them. I don't tell the truth. I tell what ought to be the truth." The words flowed through her with a familiar electricity. She knew this character intimately, understood Blanche's desperate clinging to faded beauty and gentility, her fear of harsh light that would expose her vulnerabilities. Camila recognized the universal fear of being truly seen while simultaneously yearning for that very recognition. Dropping the script onto her bed, Camila shook her head. "Don't be ridiculous," she muttered to herself. "You're a costume designer now. That's who you are." But as she prepared for bed, Tennessee Williams's words continued to echo in her mind, alongside memories of standing ovations during her college performances and the crushing disappointments that followed graduation. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by dreams of spotlights and empty stages. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Camila's mood as she made her way to Hartwick. She arrived early to prepare the costumes for the day's rehearsals and checked that everything was in order for the showcase auditions that afternoon. The familiar routine of steaming garments and organizing accessories provided a comforting rhythm, helping to quiet the disquiet that Marcus had stirred. At precisely 1:45 p.m., as Camila was finishing up her lunch break, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, "Backstage entrance, 15 minutes. No pressure, just an option. She stared at the message, her heart accelerating. With deliberate calm, she deleted the text and returned to the costume shop, determined to focus on adjusting the crown for the student playing Gertrude in Hamlet. But at 1:55, she found herself walking toward the backstage entrance, drawn by a force she couldn't quite resist or name. She told herself she was just going to watch, to support the students she'd come to care about during countless fittings and adjustments. The hallway leading to the stage was lined with anxious students in various states of preparation, some whispering lines to themselves, others engaged in vocal warm-ups or stretching exercises. None of them noticed Camila as she slipped past, finding a shadowed spot in the wings where she could observe without being seen. On stage, Sebastian Winters sat with a panel of judges, faculty members, and, as Marcus had mentioned, representatives from major talent agencies. Sophia Bennett, the golden girl of Hartwick who was playing Ophelia, had just finished her audition and was receiving enthusiastic feedback. "Exceptional emotional range, Sophia," Sebastian was saying. "We'll definitely consider you for Blanche, though we were initially thinking of you for Stella." Sophia's response carried clearly to where Camila stood. "I've always connected more with Blanche, Mr. Winters. I feel her fragility, her desperate clinging to a world that no longer exists." Camila bit back a smile. Those were almost exactly the words she'd used when discussing the character with Sophia during a costume fitting last week. The young actress had been paying more attention than Camila had realized. "Very well," Sebastian nodded. "We'll see you for callbacks tomorrow." Next, a nervous young man took the stage for his monologue, a piece from Death of a Salesman, that he delivered with technical competence but little emotional depth. The judges made notes, their expressions revealing little. 4 more students auditioned, each bringing varying levels of talent and preparation to their performances. Camila watched with a professional eye, noting how their physical choices either enhanced or detracted from their vocal delivery, mentally adjusting invisible costumes to better suit their characterizations. "Final call for the streetcar scene," announced the stage manager. "We still need a Blanche." Silence fell over the theater. The role was challenging, perhaps too challenging for many of the students. Blanche required a delicate balance of vulnerability and strength, delusion and painful clarity, sensuality and childlike dependence. No one else. Sebastian's disappointment was evident. "We need this scene for the showcase. It's a centerpiece. Perhaps we should reschedule this portion," suggested one of the agents, checking her watch. "Or cut it altogether." "That would be a shame," said another judge. Williams's work is essential for demonstrating range. As they discussed alternatives, Camila felt a presence beside her. Marcus had materialized in the shadows, his expression expectant. "Don't," she whispered. "They need a Blanche," he replied simply. "You are Blanche. I'm the costume designer. Today, maybe." His eyes held a challenge. but we both know who you really are." Before she could respond, Marcus stepped forward into the light. "Mr. Winters, if I may, I believe we have one more audition for Blanche." Sebastian looked up, irritation flashing across his features. "Marcus, we're on a tight schedule. Who are you proposing?" Marcus turned, extending his hand into the shadows where Camila stood frozen. The moment stretched between them, an invitation, a precipice, a potential point of no return. With a deep breath that did little to calm her racing heart, Camila stepped forward. The stage lights momentarily blinded her as she emerged from the wings, making her blink rapidly. Sebastian's brow furrowed in confusion. "Ms. Rodriguez, is there an issue with the costumes?" "No," Marcus answered before she could. "Rodriguez is here to audition for the role of Blanche DuBois." A beat of silence followed, broken by a poorly suppressed laugh from one of the faculty members. Sophia, who had remained to watch the other auditions, made no attempt to hide her amusement. "The costume designer?" she asked incredulously. Auditioning. Sebastian's expression shifted from confusion to barely concealed annoyance. "Ms. Rodriguez, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, this audition is for our graduating students. It's a professional showcase." "I understand," Camila said, finding her voice at last. "But you need a Blanche for your scene. And I know the role. You know the costumes for the role," corrected Sebastian. "There's quite a difference." Another ripple of laughter circulated among the students seated in the theater. Camila felt heat rising to her cheeks but forced herself to stand tall. "With all due respect, Mr. Winters, I have a BFA in theater performance from California Institute of the Arts. I'm familiar with the material and prepared to audition if you'll allow it." Sebastian exchanged glances with the other judges. A silent communication that Camila could read all too well. Indulgent dismissal. The kind one offers a child with an unrealistic ambition. "Very well," he finally said, his tone making it clear that this was a courtesy rather than a serious consideration. "You may proceed with Blanche's monologue from scene 10. 2 minutes, please." Camila nodded, moving to center stage. The lights seemed to intensify, bearing down on her with accusatory brightness. She could feel the skeptical gazes of the judges, the barely disguised smirks of the students, the weight of years spent convincing herself that she belonged in the shadows. She closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself one moment of privacy before exposure. When she opened them again, she was no longer Camila Rodriguez, costume designer from Brooklyn. She was Blanche DuBois, standing in a rundown apartment in New Orleans, confronting the brutal masculine force that would ultimately destroy her. "I don't want realism," she began, her voice soft but carrying to the farthest corners of the theater. "I want magic." The transformation was instantaneous and complete. Her posture shifted. Her accent refined itself into Blanche's affected southern gentility. Her hands fluttered with the nervous energy of a woman holding on to propriety by her fingernails. Even her face seemed to change, becoming more angular, more desperate in its beauty. "Yes, yes, magic!" "I try to give that to people. I misrepresent things to them. I don't tell the truth. I tell what ought to be the truth. And if that is sinful, then let me be damned for it." The laughter had died. The theater was utterly silent now, the air charged with the electricity of Camila's performance. She moved across the stage with Blanche's characteristic restlessness, a wounded animal seeking escape. "I don't want realism. I want magic. I try to give that to people. I misrepresent things to them. I don't tell the truth. I tell what ought to be truth. And if that's sinful, then let me be damned for it." Her voice broke perfectly on damned, revealing the cracks in Blanche's carefully constructed facade. Tears welled in Camila's eyes, not as a performance choice but as a genuine emotional response to the character's pain and perhaps to her own. "Don't turn the light on!" The line came out as a desperate plea, filled with the terror of exposure. Camila's hands raised defensively against imaginary brightness, her entire body communicating Blanche's vulnerability. As she continued the monologue, something remarkable happened. The skepticism in the room transformed into attention, then into absorption. Even Sebastian leaned forward slightly, his pen stilled over his notepad. "I never lied inside, I never lied in my heart," she concluded, her voice barely above a whisper yet somehow filling the entire space. The final words hung in the air like crystal, fragile, transparent, revealing. Then silence, complete, absolute silence. Camila remained frozen in character for several seconds before gradually returning to herself. The transition was visible, her shoulders settling back into their natural posture, her expression clearing of Blanche's haunted desperation, her breathing steadying. Still no one spoke. The judges stared, their expressions a mixture of surprise and something less definable. Sophia's smug smile had vanished completely, replaced by an unguarded look of astonishment. Sebastian cleared his throat. "Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. That was unexpected." Camila nodded, unsure what else to do. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, As one of the agents, a sharp, featured woman in her 50s, broke the tension. "Where did you say you studied?" "Kyle Arts," Camila replied. "I graduated 14 years ago. And you've been working as a costume designer since then?" the woman pressed.
"Yes."
"At various regional theaters before coming to Hartwick 5 years ago." Sebastian interrupted. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Rodriguez. We'll be in touch if necessary. Please return to your department." His tone had shifted from dismissive to carefully neutral, his expression guarded. Camila nodded again, feeling oddly deflated as she walked off stage. The brief transcendence of performance faded, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. What had she been thinking? She had a stable job, a career she'd worked hard to build, and now she'd potentially jeopardized it by stepping out of her assigned role at the academy. In the wings, Marcus waited, his expression a mixture of vindication and concern.
"That was
"A mistake." Camila cut him off, brushing past him toward the costume shop. "I shouldn't have done that." "Are you serious?" Marcus followed her down the hallway. "Cam, that was extraordinary. You silenced the entire room." Sebastian Winters was speechless, and I've never seen that man at a loss for words. "It doesn't matter," she insisted, increasing her pace. "I'm not a student. I'm not what they're looking for. I'm the costume designer, and I just made myself look foolish in front of the entire department." Marcus caught her arm gently, stopping her. "Is that what you think happened in there? Because from where I was standing, what happened was that an artist stepped into the light and showed everyone what they've been missing." Camila pulled away, unable to process the conflicting emotions surging through her, the exhilaration of performance, the fear of repercussions, the embarrassment of exposure, and beneath it all, a dangerous spark of rekindled hope. "I need to get back to work," she said firmly. "The performance is in 2 weeks, and Gertrude's crown still needs reinforcing." Marcus sighed but didn't pursue her further. "This isn't over, Cam," he called after her retreating figure. "Talent like yours doesn't stay hidden forever." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity as Camila threw herself into her work with almost manic intensity. By focusing on minute details of stitching and fabric choices, she could temporarily quiet the voice inside that kept replaying the moments on stage. The feeling of being fully alive for the first time in years. She avoided the cafeteria at dinner time, not wanting to face the stares or questions from faculty and students. Instead, she ate a protein bar at her workstation while hand-sewing pearls onto Gertrude's gown, delicate, painstaking work that required her complete attention. At nearly 8:00 p.m., when most of the academy had emptied for the evening, a knock at the costume shop door startled her. Looking up, she was surprised to see Sophia Bennett standing in the doorway, still in her rehearsal clothes. "Ms. Bennett," Camila acknowledged, setting aside her work. "Can I help you with something? Is there an issue with your costume?" Sophia stepped into the room, her usual confidence seeming somewhat muted. "No, the costumes are fine. Perfect, actually." She hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I wanted to talk to you about your audition." Camila tensed. "I'd rather not discuss it. Why didn't you tell any of us?" Sophia pressed, ignoring Camila's reluctance. "All this time, during fittings and adjustments, you were giving me notes on characterization, on breathing, on movement, but you never mentioned you could act like that." "It wasn't relevant," Camila replied, turning back to her sewing. "I'm here to design and create costumes. It's not to perform." "But you're amazing!" The genuine admiration in Sophia's voice made Camila look up again. "Your Blanche was so honest. Raw. I've been working on that monologue for weeks, and I never got close to what you did in there today." The compliment, so unexpected from the usually self-absorbed student, momentarily disarmed Camila. "You're very talented, Sophia. You just need more life experience to fully understand Blanche." Sophia came closer, perching on a stool near Camila's workstation. "That's just it. The way you performed, it was like you weren't performing at all. Like you know exactly what it feels like to be her." She leaned forward earnestly. "Will you help me? Coach me? I have callbacks tomorrow, and after seeing you, I realize how superficial my interpretation has been." Camila stared at the young woman, taken aback by the request. The Sophia Bennett she knew was fiercely independent, often dismissive of faculty guidance, secure in her family's influence and her own beauty. This humility was unexpected. "I'm not a drama coach," Camila began cautiously. "But you understand Blanche better than anyone I've ever met," Sophia insisted. "Please. I want to do her justice." Something in the girl's sincerity touched Camila. Perhaps this was where her talents truly belonged now, not in the spotlight herself, but in guiding others toward their potential. "All right," she agreed finally. "We can work for an hour, but then I need to finish these costumes." Sophia's face lit up. "Thank you." "I'll make it worth your time, I promise." For the next hour, Camila worked with Sophia on the Blanche monologue, breaking down the psychological motivations behind each line. demonstrating the physical manifestations of Blanche's fragility and desperation, exploring the character's tragic nobility. To her surprise, Sophia proved to be an eager and receptive student. Without the audience of her peers, she dropped her usual defensive arrogance, allowing herself to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, to truly listen. The key to Blanche, Camila explained as they worked, is understanding that she's not lying to deceive others, she's creating illusions because she can't bear reality. Her fantasies aren't manipulations, they're survival mechanisms. Like the paper lantern over the bare light bulb, Sophia nodded, referencing a key symbol from the play. Exactly. She's protecting herself from harsh truths the only way she knows how. By the time they finished, Sophia's performance had deepened considerably. There was still work to be done. She lacked the life experience to fully embody Blanche's desperate clinging to faded glory, but her understanding of the character had expanded dramatically. That was incredible, Sophia said as they concluded. I've learned more in this hour than in an entire semester of scene study. Camila smiled, surprised by how satisfying the teaching experience had been. You did the work. I just provided some guidance. Sophia gathered her things, then paused at the door. Ms. Rodriguez, Camila, they'd be crazy not to cast you as Blanche. Just so you know. After Sophia left, Camila returned to her sewing with a curious lightness in her chest. The day had not gone as expected. Certainly, but sharing her knowledge and passion with Sophia had been unexpectedly fulfilling. Perhaps there was a middle path, neither center stage, nor completely in the shadows. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she almost didn't hear the costume shop door open again. Looking up, she was startled to find Sebastian Winters standing there, his tall frame filling the doorway. Mr. Winters, she acknowledged, setting aside her needle. If you're looking for updates on the costumes, I've completed most of the adjustments for Act 3. They'll be ready for tomorrow's rehearsal. Sebastian stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. I'm not here about the costumes, Ms. Rodriguez. I'm here about your audition. Camila braced herself, straightening her posture almost imperceptibly. I apologize if it was inappropriate. It won't happen again. That's not... Sebastian sighed, removing his glasses to pinch the bridge of his nose. Your performance this afternoon was exceptional. Genuinely exceptional. The compliment, so unexpected from the typically critical director, left Camila momentarily speechless. Sebastian continued, moving further into the room. I've been reviewing your personnel file. Cal Arts, BFA in Theater Performance, graduated with honors. Lead roles in university productions of The Glass Menagerie, Hedda Gabler, and Proof. Regional theater experience including the La Jolla Playhouse and South Coast Repertory. He looked up from the file in his hand. An impressive background for a costume designer. Life takes unexpected turns, Camila replied carefully. Indeed, Sebastian replaced his glasses. The judging panel was quite impressed with your audition today. The agents, in particular, had questions. Camila waited, unsure where this conversation was heading. I told them you weren't available for representation or performance opportunities, Sebastian continued. That you're a valued member of our costume department and under contract with Hartwick. The words landed like stones, heavy and immovable. Of course. Sebastian wouldn't want to lose a skilled costume designer mid-season, especially with major productions already in progress. I understand, Camila said, working to keep disappointment from her voice. As I said, it won't happen again. You misunderstand me, Sebastian replied, his tone softening slightly. I wasn't declining on your behalf out of institutional selfishness. I was protecting you from a path that has already caused you pain. Camila frowned. I don't understand. Sebastian settled into a chair across from her workstation. Ms. Rodriguez, Camila, I've been in this industry for 30 years. I've seen extraordinary talent recognized, and I've seen it overlooked for reasons that have nothing to do with ability. The agents today were impressed, yes, but their questions revealed their limitations. What types could she play? Is her accent always this neutral, or can she do authentic Latina? She's a bit mature for ingenue roles, isn't she? The familiar categorizations washed over Camila like cold water. The same boxes that had constrained her early career apparently still existed. The industry has improved somewhat, Sebastian continued, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Particularly in classical theater, where tradition still dictates casting choices more than it should. So you're saying I was right to give up? Camila said, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. No. Sebastian's response was immediate and firm. I'm saying you found another path to express your artistry through costume design, and you've excelled at it, and perhaps there's yet another path forward that combines both talents. Camila looked at him questioningly. I mentioned your performance to Diane Lewis, the head of our acting department. She was intrigued, especially when I told her about the work you did with Sophia Bennett afterward. You know about that. Sebastian smiled slightly. Very little happens at Hartwick without my knowledge, Ms. Rodriguez. Sophia stopped by my office, quite transformed by your coaching session. She spoke very highly of your insights and teaching methods. Sophia is talented, Camila said. She just needed to connect more deeply with the character, and you helped her do that? Sebastian nodded. Diane is interested in discussing the possibility of adding you to the adjunct faculty for next semester. Teaching a masterclass, perhaps, on character development through physical choices, bridging the gap between performance and costume. The offer caught Camila completely off guard. Teaching. It hadn't been among the many alternate paths she'd considered when her acting career failed to materialize. This would be in addition to your role in the costume department? Of course, Sebastian clarified. With appropriate compensation adjustment, we wouldn't want to lose your design skills. I don't know what to say. Camila stammered. You don't need to decide immediately, Sebastian assured her, rising from his chair. Consider it over the next few days. Diane would like to meet with you on Monday to discuss details, if you're interested. As he reached the door, he paused. And Ms. Rodriguez. For what it's worth, your Blanche DuBois was the finest I've seen outside of Broadway. Including my own production at Lincoln Center in 2012. You found truth in her that most actresses never touch. The door closed behind him, leaving Camila alone with her thoughts and the half-finished crown of Gertrude's costume. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as she picked up her needle again. Teaching. It's not the spotlighted stage career she'd once dreamed of, but not hidden away in the costume shop either. A middle path, one that would allow her to share her understanding of character and performance while still creating the tangible art of costumes. The idea settled into her mind, taking root alongside the embers of her performance that afternoon, the feeling of being fully alive in Blanche's skin, the silent theater absorbing her every word. The connection with an audience that she'd almost forgotten. Perhaps Sebastian was right. Perhaps there was a third path that honored both aspects of her artistry. Camila worked late into the night, finishing Gertrude's crown with painstaking attention to detail. Each pearl and crystal she attached caught the light differently, creating a constellation of tiny stars, beauty born from patience and precision, just like the best performances. The following morning, Camila arrived at Hartwick earlier than usual, determined to maintain her professional routine despite the previous day's upheaval. The costume shop felt like a sanctuary, a space where her competence was established and unchallenged. She was surprised to find a small envelope slipped under the door, her name written in elegant cursive on the front. Inside was a note from Sophia. Call back at 10:00. This would mean the world if you could watch. I'm trying to channel what we worked on yesterday. S. The invitation touched Camila unexpectedly. Despite her complicated feelings about returning to the auditorium where she'd exposed herself so completely, she found herself drawn to seeing how Sophia applied their coaching session. At 9:55, Camila slipped quietly into the back of the theater, where she could observe without being immediately noticed. The judging panel was already seated, with Sebastian at the center. Flanked by faculty members and the industry representatives from the previous day, Sophia took the stage precisely at 10:00, dressed simply in a rehearsal skirt and blouse. Something in her demeanor had changed since yesterday, and newfound humility tempered her usual confidence, creating a more complex presence. Whenever you're ready, Bennett, Sebastian directed. Sophia nodded, took a centering breath, and transformed. The change wasn't as complete or instantaneous as Camila's had been, but it was remarkable nonetheless. This was a different Blanche than the one Sophia had portrayed in previous rehearsals, less externally fragile, more internally wounded. Her interpretation still lacked some of the lived experience necessary for full embodiment of the character, but her commitment to emotional truth was evident in every line. When she finished, there was a moment of appreciative silence before Sebastian spoke. Excellent work, Sophia. There's significant improvement since yesterday. More authenticity, less performance. Sophia nodded, accepting the praise with uncharacteristic modesty. Thank you. I had some help seeing Blanche more clearly. Her eyes scanned the theater until they found Camila in the back row. The slight nod of acknowledgement between them carried a new respect, artist to artist rather than student to staff member. As Sophia left the stage, Sebastian announced, "That concludes our callbacks for A Streetcar Named Desire. Cast list will be posted by 5:00 p.m. today." The judges gathered their materials, engaging in quiet discussion as they prepared to leave. Camila rose to return to the costume shop, her brief foray into the performance world complete. Ms. Rodriguez, the sharp, featured agent who had questioned her after her audition, was approaching down the aisle, hand extended. Patricia Lowe, Williams Morris Endeavor. Camila shook her hand, surprised by the direct approach. "Mums Lowe, I didn't realize you'd seen me. I make it my business to notice things others miss, Patricia replied with a thin smile. Including when someone tries to hide exceptional talent behind a sewing machine. I'm not hiding, Camila defended gently. I'm pursuing a different aspect of theater arts. Patricia studied her with shrewd assessment. Sebastian tells me you're considering teaching as well. Interesting choice. Nothing's decided yet, Camila clarified, but yes, it's a possibility. Well, before you commit to molding young minds, Patricia reached into her blazer pocket and extracted a business card. I'd like you to consider another option. We're casting for a new limited series on HBO, contemporary drama strong female ensemble. The creator is actively seeking authentic Latina actresses over 35. Not stereotypical roles, complex, fully realized characters. Camila stared at the card Patricia was holding out, making no move to take it. I'm not actively pursuing acting opportunities, Ms. Lowe, clearly, Patricia replied dryly. And yet, your 10 minutes on stage yesterday showed more authentic talent than the last 20 auditions I've sat through. Sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones that have been silent the longest. She pressed the card into Camila's reluctant hand. The casting director is an old friend. One phone call from me would get you in the room. What happens after that would be entirely up to your ability, which from what I saw, is considerable. Before Camila could formulate a response, Patricia continued, the industry is changing, Ms. Rodriguez. Slowly, too damn slowly, but it is changing. There are creators now who are specifically looking for what you bring to the table: maturity, depth, cultural authenticity without caricature. 10 years ago, maybe your experience would have repeated itself, but today, there are doors that weren't open before. Camila took the card reflexively, though uncertainty still clouded her expression. I have commitments here, responsibilities. Of course you do, Patricia acknowledged. The audition isn't for 3 weeks. Plenty of time to arrange coverage for your department if necessary. She checked her watch. I have to catch a flight back to Los Angeles. Think about it, Miss Rodriguez. Talent like yours deserves an audience. As Patricia strode away, Camila stood motionless, the business card weighing in her hand like a stone with unexpected gravity. The possibility it represented was simultaneously terrifying and thrilling. A road she'd convinced herself was permanently closed, suddenly showing signs of being passable after all. The rest of the day passed in a haze of routine tasks performed on autopilot while her mind churned with conflicting thoughts. By 5:00 p.m., when the cast list for the showcase was posted, Camila was deep in the workshop, meticulously hand-painting fabric for King Claudius's robe. She hardly noticed when Marcus appeared in the doorway. There you are, he said, studying her with concern. You've been avoiding the main hall all day. I've been working, Camila replied without looking up. These need to be ready for tomorrow's dress rehearsal. Marcus approached her workstation, his expression unreadable. The cast list is up. Camila's hand stilled momentarily before resuming its careful brushwork. And, did Sophia get Blanche? Yes, Marcus confirmed. And she's been looking for you all afternoon to thank you. Apparently, your coaching session made all the difference. A small smile touched Camila's lips. She did the work. I just pointed her in the right direction. Marcus leaned against the table, crossing his arms. There's something else on the call sheet you should know about. Camila finally looked up, brush poised mid-stroke. What? They've added a faculty showcase segment to the program, featuring one Camila Rodriguez in a scene from The Rose Tattoo, another Tennessee Williams piece. The brush slipped from Camila's fingers, leaving a streak of royal blue across the fabric. What? No, that's not. I never agreed to that. Apparently Sebastian and Diane Lewis made an executive decision. Marcus explained, not bothering to hide his satisfactions. Something about demonstrating to students the ongoing artistic growth of faculty members. They can't just... Camila stammered, reaching for a cloth to blot the errant paint stain. They can, and they did. Marcus's expression softened. It's a good role, Cam. Serafina Del Rose. Passionate, wounded, complex. And it's just one scene, no pressure of carrying an entire play. Camila shook her head adamantly. I'm not prepared. I haven't acted publicly in years. I can't, or won't, Marcus challenged gently. Because from what I saw yesterday, you're more than capable. That was different, Camila insisted. That was an impulse, a moment of madness. This is an actual performance, in front of industry professionals. Yes, Marcus agreed. People who might recognize what some of us have seen all along. That you belong in front of an audience, not just behind a sewing machine. Camila fell silent, her thoughts racing. The business card from Patricia Lowe seemed to burn in her pocket, a tangible reminder of unexpected possibilities. Now this faculty showcase, a performance opportunity that had materialized without her seeking it. I need to speak with Sebastian, she finally said, setting aside her ruined fabric. This isn't right. They should have asked me first. They're asking now? Marcus replied. Will your answer be yes, or will you hide again? The bluntness of the question stung. I'm being practical. I have a career here. Security, purpose, and talent that's being wasted, he added quietly. Don't get me wrong, Cam. You're a brilliant costume designer. But yesterday on that stage you were transcendent. There's a difference. Before she could respond, a tentative knock interrupted them. Sophia stood in the doorway, still in her rehearsal clothes, her expression uncharacteristically humble. Sorry to interrupt, she said. Ms. Rodriguez, do you have a minute? Marcus glanced between them. We'll finish this conversation later, he told Camila before nodding to Sophia and exiting the workshop. Sophia approached once they were alone, her usual confidence tempered with genuine gratitude. I got the part, she said simply. Because of you? Because of your hard work, Camila corrected automatically. Congratulations, you earned it. No. Sophia shook her head emphatically. It was different before you showed me how to approach Blanche. I was playing at her desperation, not understanding it. She hesitated, then added, I saw your name on the showcase program. You're performing too. Camila sighed, setting aside her paintbrush. Apparently so, though this is the first I'm hearing of it. That's unusual, Sophia commented, studying Camila with newfound curiosity. But exciting! Will you need a rehearsal partner? I'd be happy to help after everything you did for me. The offer, so sincere and unexpected from the formerly self-absorbed student, momentarily silenced Camila's objections. Was this happening? Was she actually considering performing again? After all these years of deliberately stepping back from the spotlight, I haven't even agreed to do it yet. Camila finally said, I need to speak with Sebastian first. Sophia's face fell slightly. Oh, I just assumed, after your audition yesterday. It seemed like what? Camila prompted when the young woman hesitated. Like you belonged on stage, Sophia finished simply. Like you'd found your way home? The words resonated more deeply than Camila wanted to admit. Home. Had the stage ever truly been home to her? Or had it been a beautiful illusion? A dream that reality had inevitably shattered? I'll think about your offer, Camila said diplomatically. Thank you, Sophia. After the student left, Camila sat alone in the workshop, surrounded by the tools of the career she'd built for herself. Fabrics and threads, patterns and sketches. Tangible creations that couldn't be denied or dismissed based on her appearance or ethnicity or age. Safe, solid achievements. Yet Patricia Lowe's business card still weighed in her pocket. The faculty showcase listing still bore her name, and somewhere deep inside, a voice that had been silenced for years was growing louder, insisting on being heard. With a decisive motion, Camila stood and headed toward Sebastian's office. Whether to accept this unexpected opportunity or firmly decline it, she needed to take control of the situation rather than allowing others to make decisions about her artistic path. The hallways of Hartwick were quieter now, most students having left for dinner or evening activities. Sebastian's office door stood ajar, warm light spilling into the corridor. Camila could hear voices inside, Sebastian's distinctive baritone and a woman's more measured tones that she recognized as Diane Lewis, the acting department head. She hesitated, not wanting to interrupt, but caught fragments of their conversation that froze her in place. Extraordinary talent, Diane was saying. Why has she been hiding in costumes all these years? The industry wasn't ready, Sebastian replied. Still might not be, though things are improving. But teaching? That's where she could make a real impact. Those students yesterday saw something they'll never forget. The faculty showcase will be the perfect introduction, Diane agreed. Low pressure, supportive environment. If she's as good as you say, better, Sebastian interrupted. Trust me. I've directed Broadway veterans who couldn't touch what she did in that audition. Camila backed away from the door, unsure whether to feel flattered or manipulated. They were discussing her future, making plans for her talents, without even consulting her, just as casting directors and agents had done years ago, deciding what roles she could or couldn't play based on their perceptions rather than her abilities. She turned away, deciding to postpone the confrontation until morning when her emotions weren't so raw. But before she could retreat down the hallway, Sebastian's voice called out, Ms. Rodriguez. Is that you? Caught, Camila had no choice but to approach the office doorway. Yes, Mr. Winters, I was hoping to speak with you, but I can come back tomorrow. Nonsense. Come in, Sebastian insisted, waving her inside. Diane and I were just discussing the faculty showcase. Perfect timing. Diane Lewis rose from her chair to greet Camila. In her early 60s, with silver hair cut in a stylish bob and keen eyes that missed nothing, she exuded the confident grace of someone who had spent decades honing her craft. Ms. Rodriguez, she extended her hand. I've heard remarkable things about your performance yesterday. I'm sorry I missed it. Camila shook her hand briefly. Thank you, Professor Lewis. But that's actually why I'm here. I understand my name has been added to the showcase program without my knowledge or consent." Sebastian and Diane exchanged glances. "We should have consulted you first," Sebastian acknowledged. "That was an oversight on our part. We were quite excited about the possibility." "It's not a possibility I've agreed to," Camila pointed out, struggling to keep her tone professional despite her irritation. "I'm the costume designer, not a member of the acting faculty." "Not yet," Diane interjected smoothly. "But Sebastian has shared with me your interest in potentially joining our department in an adjunct capacity. The showcase would be an excellent introduction to the Hartwick community in that role." "I haven't decided about the teaching position," Camila clarified, "and I certainly haven't agreed to perform. My focus needs to be on completing the costumes for the current productions." "Of course," Sebastian nodded. "The costumes take priority. But the showcase isn't for 3 weeks. Surely a single scene wouldn't interfere with your department responsibilities." Camila felt cornered. The same sensation she'd experienced in countless auditions where the outcome seemed predetermined regardless of her performance. "That's not the point," she insisted. "The point is that I wasn't consulted about a decision directly affecting my professional role here." Diane studied her with unexpected understanding. "You're absolutely right, Miss Rodriguez. It was presumptuous of us and I apologize. We'll remove your name from the program immediately if that's what you wish." The genuine contrition in the older woman's tone took some of the wind out of Camila's sails. Thank you. I would appreciate that. Before you make a final decision," Diane continued carefully, "may I ask why you're reluctant? Sebastian tells me your audition was extraordinary. Is it stage fright? Concern about balancing responsibilities? Or something else entirely?" The perceptive question cut closer to the truth than Camila was comfortable acknowledging. What was holding her back? Fear of rejection, of failure, or perhaps fear of success, of opening a door she'd firmly closed years ago, unsure where it might lead? "It's complicated," Camila finally said. "I made a deliberate choice to focus on costume design after my acting career didn't materialize. I've worked hard to build expertise and reputation in this field. Stepping on stage now feels like moving backward somehow, or like integrating 2 aspects of your artistic identity," Diane suggested gently. "From what Sebastian described, your performance drew on a deep understanding of character that informs your costume work. The 2 disciplines aren't separate for you, they're interconnected, enriching each other." The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Camila had always approached her costume designs from an actor's perspective, considering how garments affected movement, posture, self-perception, all elements that influence character development. "The showcase isn't about launching a new acting career," Sebastian added. "Think of it as an educational demonstration for our students, a masterclass in character embodiment." Put that way, the proposition seemed less threatening to the professional identity Camila had carefully constructed. A one-time performance, framed as educational rather than career redefining. "I'll consider it," she conceded finally. "But I need time to think." "Of course," Diane nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression despite Camila's qualified response. "The program won't be finalized until next week. Take the weekend to reflect. And Ms. Rodriguez, whatever you decide, I hope you'll still consider joining our faculty next semester. Talent like yours shouldn't remain isolated in a single department." As Camila left the office and walked through the quiet corridors of Hartwick, she felt oddly unmoored, as if the solid ground of her professional identity had shifted beneath her feet, revealing new possibilities that were simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. The cold air outside cleared her head somewhat as she made her way toward the subway station. Night had fallen, the campus buildings illuminated against the darkness, windows glowing with activity, students rehearsing, studying, creating, lives in progress, identities forming. On the train ride back to her apartment, Camila found herself studying her reflection in the darkened window. At 36, her face showed the first subtle signs of aging, fine lines at the corners of her eyes, a slight softening of her jawline. Not the face of an ingenue, certainly, but a face with character, with lived experience etched into its contours. "A face with stories to tell," her acting coach at Cal Arts had once observed. "Use that in your performances, Camila. Let us see the history behind your eyes." She had tried. God, how she had tried, pouring herself into auditions, bringing authentic emotion and technique to each character, leaving casting sessions emotionally drained for an effort of making herself vulnerable. And still, the responses had come, not quite what we're looking for. "Wonderful work, but not right for this particular role. We're going in a different direction." Never explicit rejection of her ethnicity or appearance, but the pattern had become clear. Classical roles went to actresses who fit traditional expectations. Latina roles went to actresses who more closely matched stereotypical expectations. either more exotic or more overtly ethnic than Camila's natural presence. The memories still stung, even years later. The gradual crushing of hope, the accumulation of rejections, the slow, painful recognition that talent alone wasn't enough in an industry built on certain narrow definitions of leading lady, ingenue, character actress. Yet yesterday, on Hartwick's stage, something different had happened. For those few minutes, she had been seen, truly seen, for her artistry rather than categorized by her appearance or backgrounds. The stunned silence afterward had spoken volumes, an acknowledgement that transcended the usual limitations. And now Patricia Lowe's business card sat in her pocket, offering a glimpse of a changed landscape. The teaching opportunity presented another path forward. Even the showcase performance, though sprung upon her without consultation, represented a chance to reclaim part of her artistic identity on her own terms. By the time Camila reached her apartment, her mind was still churning with possibilities. The small living space reflected the life she'd carefully constructed after abandoning her acting dreams. Tasteful but modest furnishings, walls adorned with textile art rather than performance memorabilia, bookshelves filled with volumes on costume history and design techniques rather than play scripts and acting methods. Yet in the bottom drawer of her bedroom dresser, beneath layers of practical clothing, lay a collection of items she hadn't been able to part with. Playbills from college performances, headshots from her brief professional attempt, notebooks filled with character analyses and scene work from her training days. Yielding to an impulse she didn't fully understand, Camila knelt beside the dresser and extracted the drawer's hidden contents, spreading them across her bed like artifacts from a previous life. Programs with her name highlighted, photographs capturing moments of performance, reviews from college productions praising her emotional authenticity and commanding stage presence. Among them was a dog-eared copy of The Rose Tattoo, the very play Sebastian and Diane had selected for her faculty showcase performance. Camila picked it up, remembering an acting class project from her final year at Cal Arts where she'd performed Serafina's monologue about her late husband. Her professor had been moved to tears, declaring it the most honest work he'd seen from a student in years. She opened the script, finding her old notations still visible in the margins, observations about Serafina's grief, her passionate nature, her struggle between holding on to the past and embracing new possibilities. So many parallels to Camila's own journey, though she hadn't recognized them fully as a 22-year-old student. Almost without conscious decision, Camila began to read Serafina's words aloud, her voice tentative at first, then gaining strength as the character's emotions resonated through her own body. The small apartment disappeared, replaced by the imagined world of a Sicilian, American widow in a Gulf Coast town, clinging to the memory of a romanticized marriage while life continued to unfold around her. The past is the past, and what's done is done. But I think of him as much as ever I did. But now I think of him as he was when he was young and beautiful, you know. Not the terrible thing that came home in the box. Camila's voice broke on the final phrase, tears springing to her eyes unexpectedly. The emotional response startled her back to awareness of her surroundings. She hadn't intended to begin rehearsing, hadn't even decided to accept the showcase opportunity. Yet here she was, already connecting to Serafina's grief and passion as if reuniting with an old friend. Perhaps that was the answer to her dilemma. Not a dramatic career change or abandonment of the security she'd built, but an integration of the different aspects of her artistry. Costume designer, potential teacher, and yes, performer on her own terms in environments where her talent could be recognized for its true value. With sudden clarity, Camila knew she would accept the showcase performance, not as a desperate grasp at a forsaken dream, but as an affirmation of her complete artistic identity. She would consider the teaching position as well, an opportunity to share her unique perspective spanning performance and design. As for Patricia Lowe's card and the audition invitation, that decision could wait, one step at a time, one conscious choice after another, not driven by others' expectations or limitations, but by her own artistic truth. Camila gathered the memorabilia from her bed, no longer treating the items as relics of a failed path, but as components of the journey that had shaped her into the artist she was today. She placed the script for The Rose Tattoo on her nightstand rather than hiding it away again. A visible commitment to the integration she was choosing. For the first time in years, she fell asleep with a sense of anticipation rather than resignation, curious about what might unfold when she fully embraced all dimensions of her talent. The following morning brought a clarity that had been missing for years. Camila moved through her apartment with purpose, selecting clothing with more care than usual, a deep burgundy blouse that brought warmth to her complexion, tailored black pants, and a handcrafted silver pendant that had been a gift from her mother. Professional as always, but with a subtle assertion of personal style that she often subdued in the workday environment of Hartwick. On the subway ride to the academy, she noticed details about her fellow passengers that normally blurred into the background of her commute. The way an elderly man's hands trembled slightly as he held the morning newspaper, the protective posture of a young mother cradling her infant, the defiant tilt of a teenager's chin as she scrolled through her phone, deliberately ignoring the adults around her. Each person contained multitudes of stories, just as Camila herself did. The recognition felt like awakening from a long, narrow dream into a world of expanded possibility. At Hartwick, she went directly to Sebastian's office, walking with a confidence that turned heads in the hallway. Finding him alone reviewing production notes, she knocked on the open-door frame. Drawing his attention, Rodriguez, he greeted her, setting aside his papers. "I hope you've had time to consider our discussion." "I have," Camila replied, remaining standing rather than taking the offered chair. "I'll participate in the faculty showcase with 2 conditions." Sebastian's eyebrows rose slightly at her directness. "And those are, first, I want input on the scene selection. If I'm going to demonstrate character work to students, I want to choose material that best showcases the integration of physical and emotional choices." "Reasonable," Sebastian nodded. "And the second condition, I want it clearly communicated that this is a one-time educational demonstration, not an indication that I'm transitioning departments. I remain fully committed to my role as costume designer." Sebastian studied her, noting the subtle changes in her demeanor, the straightened posture, the direct gaze, the quiet but unmistakable assertion of professional boundaries. "Agreed," he said finally, "though I hope you'll still consider Diane's offer of teaching a masterclass next semester. The 2 roles need not be mutually exclusive. I am considering it," Camila acknowledged, "but on my timeline, not anyone else's." A smile touched Sebastian's lips, recognition of the transformation happening before him. "Of course, I'll let Diane know you've accepted the showcase opportunity. She'll be delighted." As Camila turned to leave, Sebastian added, "Whatever scene you select, Ms. Rodriguez, I have no doubt it will be illuminating for our students." The word choice wasn't lost on Camila, an acknowledgement of her capacity to bring light to character, to illuminate truth through performance. She nodded once in acceptance of both the compliment and the responsibility it implied. The costume shop buzzed with activity when she arrived, student assistants already steaming garments for the day's rehearsals. Marcus looked up from where he was adjusting a helmet for the player king in Hamlet, his expression questioning. "You look different today," he observed. "Something's changed." "I've accepted the showcase performance," Camila informed him without preamble, hanging up her coat and rolling up her sleeves. "But on my terms." Marcus's face broke into a broad smile. "I knew you would. What made you decide?" Camila considered the question as she examined the previous day's painted fabric, assessing whether the accidental blue streak could be incorporated into the design rather than starting over. "Integration," she finally answered. "I've been compartmentalizing parts of myself for years, the performer, the designer, the teacher. So maybe they don't need to be separate." "They never were," Marcus replied with the simple wisdom that made him such a valued colleague. "Not really. Not for you." The next 3 weeks unfolded in a whirlwind of activity as Camila balanced her costume department responsibilities with preparation for the showcase performance. She had selected a powerful scene from The Rose Tattoo, in which Serafina finally begins to emerge from the shadow of her husband's death, confronting the possibility of new love with both terror and awakening desire. Rather than working with Sophia as originally offered, Camila had asked Marcus to serve as her scene partner, playing Alvaro Mangiacavallo, the simple but good-hearted truck driver who disrupts Serafina's isolated morning. As technical director, Marcus had some acting background, and his natural warmth suited the character perfectly. They rehearsed during lunch breaks and after hours, finding unexpected joy in the collaborative process. Camila approached the role with the same meticulous attention she brought to her costume designs, researching Sicilian, American cultural details, exploring the physical manifestations of prolonged grief, experimenting with how Serafina's tightly bound clothing would affect her movement and breathing. Word spread quickly through Hartwick about the costume designer, who had stunned the audition panel and would now be performing in the showcase. Students began finding excuses to visit the costume shop, observing Camila with new curiosity, sometimes gathering in the hallway when she and Marcus rehearsed after hours. Diane Lewis attended one of these impromptu rehearsals, watching silently from the doorway as Camila worked through a moment of Serafina's emotional breakthrough. Afterward, she offered not criticism but appreciation. "You found the perfect balance between technical control and emotional abandon," she told Camila. "That's what our students need to see, how discipline and vulnerability coexist in great performances. Even Sebastian, typically sparing with praise, stopped by the costume shop one afternoon with an unusual request. The directing students are struggling with a concept I've been trying to convey about character physicality. Would you be willing to demonstrate how costume choices influence movement and emotion? Perhaps next Monday. The invitation to share her expertise across departments might have seemed presumptuous weeks earlier. Now, Camila recognized it as acknowledgement of her unique perspective bridging multiple theatrical disciplines. I'd be happy to, she agreed. I'll bring some example pieces that show how weight distribution and restriction affect emotional expression. Throughout this period of rediscovery, Patricia Lowe's business card remained on Camila's dresser at home, not hidden away but not acted upon either. The HBO audition date approached, a tangible possibility that she neither embraced nor rejected, allowing it to exist as an option while she focused on the immediate path before her. The night of the showcase arrived with the electric anticipation that always preceded theatrical performances. The Morgan Theater buzzed with energy as industry professionals, faculty, students, and invited guests filled the seats, programs in hand featuring the selected works of Hartwick's most promising graduating students. Backstage, Camila helped with last-minute costume adjustments, her practiced hands steadying nervous performers with the same care she brought to fitting delicate fabrics. Sophia, resplendent in Blanche DuBois's faded elegance, caught Camila's eye across the crowded green room. "You made this possible," the young actress said, gesturing to her costume and, by extension, to the role she was about to perform. "Thank you." The simple acknowledgement touched Camila more deeply than elaborate praise might have. "You did the work," she replied, echoing her words from weeks earlier, but now with genuine recognition of Sophia's growth. "Now go show them what you've discovered about Blanche." The student showcase unfolded brilliantly, each performance showcasing the development of young artists on the cusp of professional careers. Sophia's Blanche revealed new depths with each scene. Her understanding of the character's fragility and desperate clinging to illusion evident in every gesture and vocal modulation. Then came the announcement of the faculty demonstration, a special presentation by Hartwick faculty members highlighting the integration of physical, emotional, and technical elements in character development. As Camila waited in the wings, costume perfectly fitted to enhance Serafina's key characteristics, she felt a curious calm descend. The paralyzing anxiety that had accompanied her impromptu audition weeks earlier was absent, replaced by the centered focus of an artist fully inhabiting her craft. "Ready?" Marcus whispered beside her, almost unrecognizable in Alvaro's working-class attire, his hair slicked back with pomade. Camila nodded, taking a final centering breath. "Ready." The lights dimmed briefly for the scene change, then rose on Serafina's modest living room, where she sat at her sewing machine, a deliberate nod to Camila's dual identity that had been her suggestion during the set design process. From the moment she began the scene, something magical happened, a transcendence that athletes sometimes call the zone, and performers recognize as that rare, perfect communion between artist and material. Camila disappeared completely into Serafina, her body transforming into that of a woman emerging from profound grief, her accent and gestures conveying Sicilian heritage without caricature, her emotional truth so palpable that the audience seemed to hold its collective breath. Marcus matched her beat for beat, his Alvaro providing the perfect counterpoint to Serafina's tightly wound intensity. Earnest, slightly clumsy, full of simple but profound humanity, their chemistry was undeniable. The characters' awkward attraction conveyed through subtle physical choices that spoke volumes about their emotional states. When Serafina finally broke down, confessing her fear of betraying her dead husband's memory by feeling attraction to another man, Camila delivered the monologue with such raw honesty that a palpable wave of emotion swept through the theater. Not a single cough, whisper, or rustling program disturbed the silence as the audience collectively held its breath, completely transported into Serafina's world. The scene concluded with the delicate suggestion of new beginnings, Serafina accepting a rose from Alvaro with trembling hands, a symbol of reawakening passion that resonated with Camila's own journey over the past weeks. As the lights faded, there was a moment of complete silence, the highest compliment an audience can pay, indicating an experience too profound for immediate response. Then eruption. Applause thundering through the theater, starting with the students and faculty who understood the technical brilliance they had witnessed, spreading to the industry professionals who recognized exceptional talent regardless of context. The standing ovation continued as Camila and Marcus returned for their bows, the spotlight illuminating their faces, one accustomed to such acknowledgement, the other rediscovering its power after years in the shadows. In the front row, Diane Lewis wiped away a tear, her expression one of vindication. Beside her, Sebastian nodded with satisfaction, his typically reserved demeanor softened by genuine appreciation. Among the industry seats, Patricia Lowe was already making notes in a small notebook, her sharp features animated with professional interest. Backstage, surrounded by congratulatory students and faculty, Camila felt strangely centered despite the whirlwind of attention. Something fundamental had shifted within her, not a rejection of the path she'd built as a costume designer, but an expansion that honored all aspects of her artistry. That, Marcus said when they finally had a moment alone in the quiet of the costume shop after the reception had ended, was one of the finest performances I've ever been privileged to witness, let alone participate in, and I've worked with Broadway veterans. Camila smiled, carefully hanging up Serafina's costume, which would now join the department's collection of showcase pieces. It felt right, she admitted. Like all the parts of myself, we're finally working in harmony instead of opposition. So what happens next? Marcus asked the question that hovered in the air. Acknowledging that something significant had changed, Camila considered the question carefully. I'm still figuring that out, but I know it includes teaching that masterclass next semester. And continuing as costume director here. She paused, then added, and maybe exploring some performance opportunities that align with my values and abilities, rather than trying to contort myself into someone else's expectations. Patricia Lowe couldn't take her eyes off you, Marcus observed. I overheard her telling Sebastian it was the most authentic Serafina she'd seen since Maureen Stapleton. She offered me an audition, Camilo acknowledged, for an HBO series with complex Latina characters, not stereotypes. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Are you going to pursue it? I'm considering it, Camila replied thoughtfully. Not as a desperate grasp at a dream I thought was dead, but as one facet of the artist I'm continuing to become. She smiled at her longtime friend and colleague. Integration, remember. All the pieces working together instead of competing. As they prepared to leave the theater, Sophia appeared in the doorway, still flushed with the success of her own performance but her expression earnest. Ms. Rodriguez, Camila, she began, then hesitated. I just wanted to say, watching you tonight changed something for me. I've been so focused on being a star, on recognition, on the external validation. But what you showed us was something deeper, what it means to truly serve the character, to disappear into truth rather than performing for effect. Coming from the formerly self-absorbed student, the insight revealed remarkable growth. That's the highest compliment you could give me, Sophia, Camila replied sincerely. And for what it's worth, your Blanche tonight showed that same commitment to truth. You're going to have a remarkable career if you stay on that path. After Sophia left, Camila completed her final checks of the costume shop, turning out lights with the same care she always brought to her departmental responsibilities. Tomorrow would bring new fittings, alterations, design challenges, the work she had chosen and mastered over years of dedicated focus. But now that work would exist alongside other expressions of her talent, teaching, occasional performances, perhaps even new opportunities like the HBO audition. Not compartmentalized aspects of herself, but integrated facets of a complete artistic identity. As she left the theater, the night air cool against her face, Camila glanced up at the illuminated marquee announcing the Hartwick showcase. Years ago, she had walked away from performance, convinced that the industry's limitations meant her talent would never be fully recognized or valued. Tonight had proven otherwise, not because she had changed to fit external expectations, but because she had finally, fully claimed all aspects of her artistry on her own terms. The costume designer, the performer, the teacher, all coexisting in one complete artist, refusing to be diminished or categorized by others' perceptions. The following Monday morning, Camila arrived at Hartwick earlier than usual, feeling a new lightness in her step despite the weight of decisions still before her. The HBO audition was scheduled for Wednesday. She had called Patricia Lowe over the weekend to confirm her interest, making it clear that any role would need to accommodate her continuing responsibilities at Hartwick. To her surprise, Lowe had been receptive. This isn't a conventional situation, the agent had acknowledged, but talent like yours warrants unconventional arrangements. The showrunner specifically mentioned wanting authentic voices with real-world experience outside the Hollywood bubble. Your background in costume design and education could be an asset rather than a limitation. Now, as Camila unlocked the costume shop and prepared for the day ahead, she found Sebastian waiting for her, a folder in his hands and an uncharacteristically warm smile on his face. "Good morning, Miss Rodriguez," he greeted her. "I hope you've had a chance to recover from your triumph." "Hardly a triumph," Camila demurred, though the word resonated with her private assessment of the evenings. "But it was certainly a meaningful experience." "That's putting it mildly," Sebastian replied, following her into the workshop. The industry representatives haven't stopped talking about your performance. 3 of them contacted me over the weekend to inquire about your professional status and representation. Camila set down her bag, absorbing this information with newfound composure. Weeks earlier, such news might have sent her into a spiral of conflicting emotions. Now it simply felt like confirmation of the path she was choosing to explore. "I assume you told them I'm fully employed here at Hartwick," she said, turning on lights and preparing the workspace for the day's tasks. "I did," Sebastian nodded. "But I also mentioned that you're exploring select professional opportunities that complement your work here." He held out the folder. "Which brings me to this." Camila accepted the folder, opening it to find formal documentation from Hartwick's administration, a revised contract offering a joint appointment between the costume department and the acting department, with adjusted compensation and specific provisions for professional leaves to accommodate external projects. "Diane and I spoke with the dean yesterday," Sebastian explained as Camila scanned the documents. "We believe Hartwick would benefit enormously from retaining your talents in both capacities, while allowing you the flexibility to pursue outside opportunities that enhance your professional development and by extension, the Academy's prestige." The contractual language was clear and generous, offering security while acknowledging her expanded professional identity. No longer would she need to compartmentalize her artistic expression. The institution itself was formally recognizing her multifaceted talents. "This is unexpected," Camila admitted, genuinely moved by the recognition and support. "Is it?" Sebastian questioned gently. "After what we all witnessed Saturday night, I think not." He moved toward the door, pausing before exiting. "Take your time reviewing the offer. We're prepared to be flexible on the details." And Camila, his use of her first name signaled a shift in their professional relationship. "Whatever path you choose, know that your work here, all aspects of it, is deeply valued." Left alone, Camila sat at her workstation, the contract before her and Patricia Lowe's business card in her pocket, tangible symbols of possibilities that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. The HBO audition awaited her on Wednesday. The teaching opportunity was formalized in the contract, and her costume design work continued to fulfill her creative spirit. Marcus arrived an hour later, finding Camila methodically organizing fabric swatches for an upcoming production, her movements precise yet somehow lighter than before. "So," he said without preambles, "has the world stopped spinning since Saturday night, or are we just pretending everything's normal?" Camila smiled, holding up the contract. "Definitely not normal, but perhaps better." Marcus reviewed the document, his expression shifting from curiosity to satisfaction. "Joint appointment, professional development leave, salary adjustment. They're serious about keeping you while letting you spread your wings." "It appears so." "And the HBO audition? Still on for Wednesday?" Camila confirmed. "Though I've made it clear to Patricia that any role would need to accommodate my responsibilities here." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Integration, not compartmentalization." "You're actually doing it." "Trying to," Camila acknowledged. "One step at a time." The costume shop gradually filled with student assistants and faculty colleagues, all subtly treating Camila differently in the wake of her showcase performance. A new respect in their eyes, questions about her process, invitations to collaborate across departments. The change wasn't dramatic but pervasive, as if a previously invisible barrier had dissolved. Wednesday arrived with unexpected calmness. Camila took a personal day, having arranged coverage for her costume responsibilities, and traveled to the HBO casting office in Manhattan. The familiar butterflies of audition anxiety fluttered in her stomach, but they were tempered now by a grounding sense of self-worth that had often been missing in her early career. The waiting room contained the usual mix of hopeful actors, some frantically reviewing sides, others projecting artificial confidence, all carrying the barely concealed vulnerability of artists placing themselves before judgment. Camila observed them with new perspective, seeing both her younger self and the woman she had become in their anxious preparations. "Ms. Rodriguez." The casting assistant's voice broke into her contemplation. "They're ready for you." Inside the audition room, Camila found Patricia Lowe seated alongside a director and showrunner. Elena Vasquez, a groundbreaking Latina filmmaker whose work Camila had long admired for its authentic portrayal of complex characters. "Ms. Rodriguez." Elena greeted her warmly. "Thank you for coming in today. Patricia has told us about your unusual career path, and I must say I find it fascinating. Most actors struggle to find stable work between creative projects. You've built an entire career alongside your performance talents." The acknowledgement of her dual identities immediately set this audition apart from those Camila had experienced years earlier, where her background had been treated as a liability rather than an asset. "I wasn't sure if I would ever return to performance," Camila admitted candidly, but recent experiences have shown me that perhaps the industry has evolved since my earlier attempts. Some parts of it have. Elena agreed with pointed emphasis. Others are still catching up, but creators like myself are actively working to change the landscape, to tell stories that reflect the actual diversity and complexity of human experience. She handed Camila the sides for the audition. The role we're considering you for is Carmen Fuentes, a museum curator specializing in Latin American textiles. Her professional expertise is central to the plot, but so is her personal journey as a woman reconnecting with aspects of her heritage that she once set aside to navigate predominantly white institutions. The parallels to Camila's own experience were unmistakable, creating an immediate connection to the character that transcended the usual audition preparation. Take a few minutes to review the scene, Elena suggested. It's Carmen's confrontation with the museum board about their tokenistic approach to Latin American art. As Camila read through the material, she found herself nodding in recognition. The character's frustrations echoed conversations she'd had with herself countless times, the challenge of maintaining authentic identity while navigating institutions that claimed to value diversity, but often failed to understand its true meanings. When she performed the scenes, something remarkable happened. The same transcendent connection she had experienced as Serafina, but now with material that spoke directly to her lived experience. Carmen's passionate defense of cultural authenticity flowed through Camila with electric immediacy, her body and voice finding the perfect physical expressions for righteous indignation tempered by professional restraint. The room fell silent when she finished. Elena and the director exchanged a glance that Camila had seen many times from the other side, the unspoken recognition of having witnessed something genuine. "Well," Elena said finally, setting aside her notes, "I think we can all agree that was exceptional." She leaned forward, studying Camila with genuine curiosity. "Patricia mentioned you have continuing commitments at Hartwick Academy. How do you envision balancing those responsibilities with a recurring role in our series?" The question was posed not as a challenge but as a practical consideration, an invitation to collaborative problem-solving rather than a potential disqualification. "I've recently been offered a joint appointment at Hartwick," Camila explained. "The contract includes provisions for professional leaves for exactly this type of opportunity. The shooting schedule would be the primary consideration. Concentrated filming periods would be easier to accommodate than sporadic shooting days spread over months." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "We're planning an 8-episode first season with block shooting, 2 directors each handling 4 episodes, filming consecutively rather than simultaneously. Your character appears in 6 episodes, with concentrated work during specific production weeks." She glanced at the production schedule in her notes. "What could potentially arrange your scenes to minimize disruption to your teaching commitments?" The conversation continued, exploring practical logistics rather than dwelling on hypotheticals. By the time Camila left the audition, she had a clear sense that this opportunity, unlike so many in her past, might actually materialize in a form that complemented rather than competed with the life she had built. "That was extraordinary," Patricia commented as they walked out together. "I've been sending actors to Elena for years. I've never seen her engage with potential casting on that level, discussing scheduling accommodations during a first audition. It felt different," Camila acknowledged. "Like being seen as a whole person rather than just as a potential commodity." "The industry is changing," Patricia replied, echoing her earlier assessment. "Too slowly in many ways, but genuine opportunities are emerging for authentic voices and unconventional paths. Elena is at the forefront of that change." "When will I hear about their decision?" Camila asked. "Soon," Patricia promised. "But regardless of the outcome, I hope you'll consider letting me represent you for select projects moving forward. With your teaching schedule and costume work, we'd focus on quality over quantity, roles that matter, projects with substance." The offer of representation, so casually presented, would have seemed like an impossible dream just weeks ago. Now, it felt like a natural next step in the integration Camila was embracing. "I'd like that," she agreed, extending her hand to formalize the arrangement. "On those terms exactly." The weeks that followed unfolded with a sense of expanding possibility rather than narrowing constraints. Camila signed her new contract with Hartwick, officially accepting the joint appointment between departments. She worked with Diane Lewis to develop the curriculum for her masterclass on character physicality and costume integration. Scheduled for the spring semester, the costume shop remained her primary domain, where her expertise continued to shape the visual storytelling of Hartwick's productions. But now students from the acting department often sought her guidance as well, recognizing the unique perspective she brought to character development through both internal and external approaches. 3 weeks after her audition, the call came from Patricia, HBO had offered her the role of Carmen Fuentes, with a contract accommodating her Hartwick responsibilities, just as Elena had suggested. Filming would begin during Hartwick's summer break, with additional shooting blocks scheduled during academic holidays and a 2-week professional leave in October. "It's really happening," Camila told Marcus over coffee in the campus cafe, still processing the convergence of opportunities that had seemed impossible just months earlier. "It was always possible," Marcus replied with the quiet assurance that had made him such a valuable friend and colleague. "You just needed to stop seeing your different talents as competing alternatives and start recognizing them as complementary strengths." "Integration, not compartmentalization," Camila echoed their now familiar mantra. "Exactly." Marcus raised his cup in a toast. "To the artist you've always been, now fully expressed." As spring blossomed into summer, Camila found herself standing once again before an audience, not in the familiar backstage shadows-adjusting costumes, but center stage at Hartwick's graduation ceremony, where she had been invited to deliver remarks as a faculty representative. Looking out at the sea of faces, graduating students she had costumed and occasionally coached, faculty colleagues from across departments, proud families witnessing the culmination of educational journeys, Camila felt a deep sense of coming full circle. "The art of transformation is central to theater," she began, her voice clear and confident, carrying to every corner of the auditorium without strain. "As costume designers, we facilitate physical transformation through fabric and form. As actors, we embody transformation through voice and movement. As educators, we nurture transformation through knowledge and guidance." The parallel to her own journey was implicit but unmistakable to those who knew her story. But the most profound transformations often occur when we stop forcing ourselves to choose between our various talents and instead find ways to integrate them, to bring our full, authentic selves to our creative work. In the front row, Sebastian nodded appreciatively. Beside him, Diane Lewis smiled in recognition of the philosophy they had discussed in developing Camila's new role at Hartwick. "The world will often try to categorize you, to place you in convenient boxes with clear labels." Camila continued, making eye contact with individual students whose struggles with typecasting or artistic identity she had witnessed. "The greatest challenge, and the greatest opportunity, lies in defining yourself on your own terms, integrating all aspects of your talent in ways that may not fit conventional expectations, but that honor your unique artistic truth." Among the graduates, Sophia Bennett listened with particular attention, her expression reflective rather than dismissive, a transformation in itself from the entitled student she had been months earlier. Some paths appear linear, leading directly from training to professional success. Others, many others, take unexpected turns, seeming detours that ultimately enrich your art in ways you cannot anticipate. Camila smiled, acknowledging her own circuitous journey. "The key is recognizing that these alternate routes aren't failures or compromises, but opportunities to develop a unique perspective that no conventional path could provide." As she concluded her remarks to enthusiastic applause, Camila felt a deep sense of alignment, all aspects of her identity and talent flowing together in harmony rather than conflict. The costume designer, the performer, the educator, all facets of a single, integrated artistic self, now fully expressed and recognized. Later that evening, as she packed for the first week of HBO filming scheduled to begin the following Monday, Camila found herself filled with anticipation rather than anxiety. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them as her complete self, not desperately seeking validation for one aspect of her talent at the expense of others, but confidently bringing her full artistic identity to each new opportunity. The costume shop at Hartwick would remain her creative home base, the classroom her platform for sharing integrated knowledge, and now, occasional performance opportunities would allow that third dimension of her artistry to find expression as well. Not compartmentalized choices but complementary expressions of a single, multifaceted talent. As Camila folded the script for her first scenes as Carmen Fuentes, placing it alongside fabric swatches for the upcoming fall production and notes for her masterclass curriculum, she smiled at the visual representation of integration that had once seemed impossible. The industry hadn't changed completely, bias and narrow casting parameters still existed in many sectors, but creators like Elena Vasquez were carving out new spaces for authentic representation and complex characters. Educational institutions like Hartwick were recognizing the value of multidisciplinary approaches and real-world professional experience. And perhaps most importantly, Camila herself had changed, finding the courage to reclaim all dimensions of her artistic voice on her own terms. No longer hidden behind her sewing machine, no longer silenced by rejection or categorization, Camila Rodriguez had stepped fully into the light, not as a desperate grasp at a forgotten dream, but as the natural evolution of an artist finally ready to be seen in her complete, integrated truth. The woman they had once dismissed had finally found her voice, not just as an actress or a designer or a teacher, but as all three simultaneously. And in that integration, she had discovered something beyond external validation or conventional success, the profound satisfaction of artistic authenticity, expressed without compromise or apology. When Camila walked onto the HBO set the following Monday, she carried with her not just the character of Carmen Fuentes, but the entirety of her artistic journey. Every costume she had created, every student she had guided, every rejection that had redirected her paths. These experiences weren't baggage to be hidden, but valuable perspective that enriched her performance in ways no conventional career trajectory could have provided. Places, everyone? Called the assistant director. Ms. Rodriguez, are you ready? Camila took her position, Carmen's righteous determination aligning with her own hard-won confidence.
Yes,
she replied, her voice steady and clear, I'm ready. And she was, not just for this scene or this role, but for the integrated artistic life she had finally claimed as her own. The spotlight no longer represented desperate validation or exclusionary judgment, but simply one of many platforms where her voice could now be heard in its full, authentic truth. They had laughed when she stepped on stage to audition, but when Camila's voice filled the theater, their smug smiles vanished. The woman they once dismissed had left them completely speechless, not because she had conformed to their expectations, but because she had transcended them entirely, on her own terms.